Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Walter Dial, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the Exit Readiness Podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building sellable business value and for planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's sellable and exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. A business owner who has a sellable business is going to have more options for exit. And so that's foundational to the work that we do. One of the common misperceptions about exit planning is that it's all about the future, when actually it's very much about the present and how the business is being built today. Again, because we want to help that owner build a business that's sellable, so they'll have as many options as possible.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Pat. And when we talk about valuing a business, one of the things that a prospective buyer is always looking at is how strong is the financial performance. And in a buyer's eyes, financial performance, really the two main strengths are going to be revenue and net income. So those are really the two drivers of value that we see. So today we're going to focus on the top line, or the sales revenue, and our topic is how to upgrade your sales process for predictable results. And our speaker is a very experienced and acclaimed expert on the topic, Ken Smith of the Sandler Sales Institute, located right up the road in Rockville, Maryland. He's recognized nationally as a Salesforce development expert. He specializes in executive sales management consulting and sales productivity training. Ken and his associates work with individuals and growing companies who are committed to achieving high levels of performance. And he's been doing this for a long time. He started his sales career back in 1982, before Pat and I were even born. And he's been a principal with the Sandler Sales Institute since 1995. So we have someone here today who is absolutely qualified to help us upgrade sales process for predictable results. Welcome to the podcast, Ken.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Good to be here. And again, thanks for the opportunity to speak with you and to share some ideas and concepts with those who might be listening.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, Ken, good to hear your voice today. Let's get started, Ken, here with the concept of a sales process. Doesn't everyone that sells have a set of steps that they attempt to follow? What would you say about that?
Well, and it's a great question, and I certainly believe that all selling professionals have some idea of what they must do to turn a prospect into a client. But how effective is that process in today's sales environment? So I know from time to time I have the opportunity to ask sales and business development professionals, hey, what's your current process? What's your system? And most end up just telling me the steps they attempt to implement. For example, if someone that sells application software, maybe they have an initial meeting or a phone conference with the prospect, their second step is to schedule and do a demonstration of the software. Then they want to provide a proposal, and then they hope they get the business. But these are steps, and not a process that includes specific methods. For example, assuming someone wants the appropriate decision makers present, what's the strategy for making this happen throughout those steps? Or how does one uncover what a prospect is truly willing and able to invest? And if the prospect's unwilling to share that number, or maybe the response is vague, what does one do then? And further still, how does one uncover information about the competition? And with this, is a prospect predisposed to maybe an alternative solution? And if so, how is this handled? So I think also what comes into this is most everyone that sells will agree that professional selling has changed. And today it's more challenging than ever. So now having a proven, predictable process is of much greater importance.
So Ken, let me ask you a question. one of the things that when Pat and I are helping companies increase their value, one of the important factors is written documentation regarding the various processes. So, a lot of companies will have an HR manual and stuff like that, but the size companies Pat and I generally work with are somewhere between 5 and 20 million of revenue, and it's very rare that we see a written sales process. Is that your experience also? And how important is it to actually have a written process?
And a great point. Again, my clients tend to be within a similar range as far as revenue goes. And most of those not only do not have a sales process, but they also do not have a sales playbook. Now, a sales playbook really transcends a sales process, because if that is something that's done correctly, then the sales playbook is an ongoing project. It provides a great deal of continuity. It also defines what a new person would need if they were coming into the role of sales professional or business developer in the company. So it's an important part of the onboarding, or an integral part of what's going to be done in onboarding. So that sales playbook should not only include a documented sales process, but also different ways to prospect, the history of the company, the history of the marketplace, current market trends, competition, what are competition's strengths and weaknesses. And again, it is an ongoing project. And with that, a company is certainly empowered to have something that then allows for the sharing of best practices amongst the sales team members as well.
Great. So can you elaborate on exactly what you mean by the prospects process?
Well, if we look at that a little closer, these are likely the steps. Number one, prospects don't tell the truth, and they hold their cards close to their chest. So one's value system can change when they are a prospect. And so it's okay to withhold information and mislead a salesperson. I don't think that prospects mislead salespeople because they are bad people. I think they do it out of desire for self-preservation and to stay in control of the process. An example here, a prospect might say to a salesperson who has contacted him, we're not in the market for that right now, but email your contact information and I'll let you know if we have future interest. When in reality, the prospect is currently interested or will be in the very near future. Then there's step number two. If or when prospects do express interest, they want to know everything that the salesperson knows. And they are skillful and experienced at getting this information while sharing very little information about themselves. And I think this is very much evidenced by salespeople spending time with prospects, answering every question they ask. And when the encounter is over, the prospect received all the information he was after, while the salesperson may have learned very little. And to be more specific, the selling professional may not know when or by when the prospect needs to make a decision, or if doing nothing is even an option. Also, who are the competitors that are being considered? And is a prospect predisposed to working with someone else at this point? Another example, what is the exact amount of money that the prospect is truly willing and able to invest? And then, hey, who else is involved in the decision-making process? Who else might influence that? So again, a lot of information that sales professionals aren't able to obtain, because in step number two of the prospect system, again, they're very good at being able to get all the information from the selling professional while holding everything close to their chest. And then the third step for prospects is they commit to nothing, and they are likely positive. What does that sound like? Hey, thanks for the proposal. You're definitely in the running, and we'll get back to you. Or Your presentation was very interesting, and we're going to consider this in the near future. So salespeople hear these things, and many think they have something, but in reality, they have nothing at all. And prospects often use these play it safe words and phrases to string salespeople along because they know that they will always be willing unpaid consultants to provide additional information if they ask. And then there's the prospect's final step. And this is when he disappears and goes dark. And most salespeople will now hold out hope while being held at bay by voicemail or email. So I think, the point I would make to the listeners is this, that it's just a fact of business life. If selling professionals don't have an effective, predictable system, their prospects will take the lead in what we refer to as a buyer-seller dance, and then salespeople will unknowingly default to their prospect system.
Yeah, so then, Ken, get into a little bit more detail then on how salespeople would counter all that you just said in regard to a prospect's process, counter all of this. Yeah, if you could get into that and elaborate on that a little bit, that would be helpful.
Sure. I think that first of all, salespeople must take complete responsibility for building trust and helping a prospect become as comfortable as possible, as quickly as possible. So I'm saying your selling professionals must be masterful at building trust with prospective clients, because in today's environment, in a matter of seconds and certainly minutes, a prospect makes a subconscious decision of either, hey, this person sounds like everybody else, or, if this person can help me, I wouldn't mind doing business with him or her. So what most selling professionals still do today is make an attempt to build rapport by looking for commonality or something in the prospect's office, if they're there, that begs a comment. For example, if there's a University of Maryland diploma on the wall, the salesperson, well, hey, I went to Maryland also, right? When in fact, maybe they didn't. Or if there's a picture of the prospect with Joe Gibbs, hey, when was that picture taken with Joe Gibbs? Or maybe the prospect has a corner office with a great view of the downtown area. Then, salesperson saying, wow, what a great view you've got here. So the prospect hears these things from every salesperson that has been in his or her office. So instead, I strongly recommend that selling professionals act interested in the prospect. So what do I mean by this? If it's a business owner, hey, how did you end up in this business? And everyone has a story, and everyone loves to tell their story. I mean, almost to the point where it can be sickening, And then, hey, what do you like most? What do you like most about the business? Or if it's a manager or an executive, hey, how did you end up as a senior VP of facilities here? And again, everyone loves to tell their story, and it also provides the selling professional with an opportunity to, interject, very, serious, interesting questions along the way. Or if one is selling to homeowners, right? Hey, how did you end up living in this neighborhood? And again, everyone loves to tell their story. So all of this is opposite of what the prospect expects, and it's different than the approach used by other salespeople. But again, by being genuinely interested in a prospect and not a prospect's possessions, I think salespeople help prospects become more comfortable. A selling professional can also disarm prospects by telling them up front, hey, on occasion, I find that we can't help someone. And if I find that to be the case here, I hope you'll be okay with me saying this. Again, totally unexpected from a selling professional, but totally unexpected from a prospect, but yet prospects find this very refreshing. Alternatively, letting prospects know that it's okay to say no. That might sound like, hey, if at any point in our meeting you find that our solution isn't what you're after, could you stop me? Let me know. I'll be comfortable with that, and we can then end our conversation. So again, a lot of alternative approaches where it's, I guess, unexpected by the prospect, but yet the prospect will find this very genuine and also become the become to feel much more comfortable when they're with that professional.
Yeah. Hey, Ken. Ken, here's a question. Back when you were talking about the process, you mentioned something very interesting. You made a point about salespeople becoming, at times, unpaid consultants for a period of time. And, Walter and I are consultants, basically,
Okay.
advisors and consultants. And to this point, you were just making about building trust and being genuinely interested. We like to think we are genuinely interested. I think we are. And so oftentimes in building trust and being genuinely interested, early on, as we're getting to know them and they're getting to know us a little bit, there is a level of unpaid consulting going on and advice. And I'm just wondering what you would say about that any further. And, is there a line that you kind of draw in the sand in your mind that I don't want to cross over this line in regard to being an unpaid consultant? Or how do you just think through that?
Well, I will tell you that one of the, I guess, biggest challenges that we have in working with our clients to help them alter their approach. And yes, we end up working, as you can imagine, we end up working with a lot of consultants and those that provide a variety of professional services. And, there is a predisposed in their concept is, they're predisposed to, when they get in front of a prospect, they need to immediately let the prospect know that they're credible and they've got the experience and they certainly, know more than what the prospect might know about that particular subject. And so our challenge is to get those that we work with to stop educating their prospects. And I may come back to this, but the more time you spend educating your prospect, the more the prospect will begin to consider competition. Now, as odd as that sounds, let's say, I'll give you an example. I don't know if either one of you have ever purchased replacement windows for your home. But the home that I lived in before the one I live in now, the windows were terrible. And they were terrible because, first of all, you couldn't open them. I'm very fortunate. Myself and my family we're very blessed. We don't have allergies. So in the spring and fall, we want to raise the windows and let some fresh air in. Well, these windows you could not raise. There was a wooden frame, wooden window, a wooden sash, and then there was a storm window on the outside of that and an aluminum frame. So I'd have to take my fist and bang with all my might around the sash of the window to loosen it up in the frame. And then, I'd have to raise the window, and then I would wrestle with the storm window. And after I had put my fist through a couple of window panes, trying to loosen up the sash in the frame, and I have scars to show for that. I resorted to taking a block of wood and a hammer. And so anyway, you couldn't raise these windows. The other thing is the insulation from the windows was terrible. So I made the decision I was going to replace the windows. And I had never done this before. And I spoke to someone I know, a friend, and he said, yeah, man, hey, I replaced my windows. Here's the name of the guy. This is the only person you need to call. And so I invited him over. And right or wrong, I am a decision maker. I'm not going to spend a lot of time shopping for windows. And my wife was with me, and the guy came over, and I said to him, hey, I've never purchased replacement windows before. What am I in for? And the guy took off, and he had to tell us about R factors or R values. To this day, I don't even know what those are. Then he went on to talk about the differences between double pane and triple pane, and then further still about, he wanted to extol the value, the virtues of composite versus wood versus plastic and double hung and triple hung, and on and on and on this guy went. And so when he was finally over, my wife gave me an elbow because she knows how I am. She says, we're not buying these windows today. There's a lot to know about replacement windows. we're going to have to talk to some other people. So, I try to give you that little story because this is oftentimes what happens. A prospect wants to be understood. A prospect wants someone to understand their problems. A prospect wants someone to empathize with their problems. Prospects will feel most comfortable with someone that is to be genuinely interested in their problems and their challenges. So the more time we spend educating prospects about our solution and our company and our expertise, the further we move away from that. And so it becomes much more important to find out from the prospect, hey, why would you even need a solution like this? Why would you even want to consider something like this now, and get out of the way? So, prospects need to be sharing with us pretty much right out of the gate. Hey, these are my problems. This is why they are problems. This is what could happen if I don't begin to solve these problems. And these are consequences that I don't want to live with. And if all of that is not there, then you probably don't have a prospect. So, most salespeople dump information, and they dump information. They don't get the benefit of learning about the prospect's real reasons or compelling reasons to want to do business. And that is what we refer to over here in our camp as free consulting, because the prospect gets the benefit of learning everything that a selling professional knows, everything they want to know, and that's proprietary, if you want to consider it that way. And while the salesperson, again, learns very little about the prospect.
Good. That answers my question. Absolutely does. Walter, you had a question?
Yeah. So, Ken, we're talking about process, obviously. Do you think salesmen are born or made? In other words, if you have somebody who is, somewhat introverted or whatever, can a process make them a good salesman?
Wow. I wish I had a dollar for every time I had been asked that question. I don't believe salespeople are born. Not at all. Uh, you know, Consider this, Walter. You asked the question. So when we were all little kids, and maybe we were asked by our older family members, extended family, or here we were in kindergarten, and the questions. So what do you want to be when you grow up? And what do kids always say? I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be
an accountant.
I want to be a professional. I want to be a professional football player, or I want to be a doctor. I want to be a nurse. I want to be. No one ever says I want to be a salesperson, right? And if you look at, and if someone were to say I want to be a salesperson, that would likely probably draw or elicit an unusual response from who asked the question. We also are taught at a very early age, and if everyone knows that these things, we get all these messages, we carry those with us. And if you dive into this science of transactional analysis, and how it all has such huge impact on how we behave and how we're programmed to behave when certain things happen and certain times, we got these messages, hey, don't ever go where you're not wanted, right? Don't make a pest of yourself. Don't ask so many questions, right? Don't ever trust salespeople, right? Respect your elders. It's impolite to talk about money. Don't ask others how much money they have. And all of these are questions, of course, that sales professionals must be very comfortable asking. So, I don't believe salespeople are born. I also don't believe that this person that we encounter, who seems to be very outgoing and warm and friendly and has the so-called gift of gab, that's not what makes good salespeople. I think there is a stereotype that, hey, someone has to be very sociable if they're going to be a good salesperson. I think the opposite is true, quite frankly. I think those that tend to be outgoing and warm and friendly tend to be those that have a higher need for approval and acceptance, which if one is out there in the sales world trying to get that met, then they're going to have a difficult time producing at a high level. Because the fact of the matter is, prospects never want to see a salesperson because they want to make a friend. And so those that tend to be more introverted, those that tend to be, I hate to use the word quiet, but those in no way are detriments to becoming a very strong salesperson. The other question I'm asked often is, hey, what is a single characteristic? If you could, pick one or tell me about one that is the biggest differentiator that really allows salespeople to perform at a higher level. And that's pretty simple. It's desire. It's the passion. It's the burn, to want to achieve something of significance. And whether that might be as a selling professional, as an entrepreneur, as an engineer, that trumps pretty much everything else, in my opinion.
So let's get back to strategies process for a second, Ken. What are some strategies to consider if a listener out there is looking to upgrade their process and make it more predictable?
Okay. A lot here, but let me just try to limit it for the benefit of time. I think one of the things that occurs is selling professionals fall short, in some cases way short, in managing prospects' expectations. So if you are a prospect for me and you've never purchased what it is that I can potentially sell to you, you don't know what that's going to look like, be like, feel like, sound like, because you've never had that experience before. And so particularly those that sell technology or software, some sort of engineered solution, this is something that a prospect has never purchased before. So salespeople fail to, explain to prospects what that process would be like. So this may help make this point more clear. Let's say a salesperson was asked by a prospect, hey, what is it that I need to do? What is it that we need to do so that together we can determine whether or not you can help me? So if a prospect were to ask that, which on occasion you may find some that do, most don't, then it's kind of refreshing. But prospects, for the most part, are always thinking that. And so if, say, I've got a simple process, I meet with a prospect, if there's a next step, I go back, present a proposal and explain, what the scope of work looks like and the cost and the commitment, and then I'm hoping to get a decision. Then I would be saying at the very front end when I have a prospect, hey, would it make sense for me to explain to you how we work with others like you so that together we can determine whether or not you might want to implement our solution? And of course, prospects will always agree. And then I would say, well, first of all, there's a meeting. And in this face-to-face meeting, the appropriate decision makers are there. So typically, in a case like yours, that would be the business owners or the CEO. And there is, again, candid conversation, a lot of questions asked on both sides. And then together we determine whether or not it would make sense to go to the next step. If there's a next step, then we would schedule that at the conclusion of that meeting. And that would be for the purpose of me coming back, providing you with a proposal, giving you a brief presentation of what the implementation would look like, how long it would take, what the cost would be. And then at the conclusion of that meeting, someone makes a decision on whether or not, yes or no, whether or not they want to move forward with our solution. So that's the process. What would you like to do? So most sales professionals, tend to avoid that. It's not done up front. So that's one of the areas that I think is critical, is to define the process and what decisions actually should be made at the conclusion of each step. Another area would be as I've already mentioned, stop educating prospects, right? And so at the very front end, someone should be asking, so what's compelling you to look at a solution like this now? So Walter, if you're a CPA, if I'm a CPA, then I'm going to see a new prospect, say it's a business owner. I should be right up front, should be asking you, hey, why would you even want to switch to another CPA now? What is it that you're hoping that a different firm might be able to bring to you that you're not getting now? Or, if I, am someone, Pat, that's in your business saying, hey, can you help me here? When I talk to people, usually I hear from them a number of different reasons as to why they want to get started with their exit planning. What are your reasons? So at the very front end, we need to impose on prospects. We need to ask prospects to educate us. And if you have a real prospect, they are quite willing to do this. The next step is, they give you the reasons. Find out, what's behind those reasons. We say, well, there's a problem. Well, what's the reason for the problem? The problem is the what. The reason is the why. The why is always more important than the what. And then finally, hey, what happens if you don't address these issues now? And of course, prospects in their thinking oftentimes haven't gone this far. And so now we are building trust at a much different and a higher level by getting prospects to educate us. We just don't need to educate prospects. Now, granted, there's literal reality. When it comes time to fulfill, we do have to give the prospect, some concept or, idea of how we're going to help them before they're going to make a decision. So that would be another, along with managing expectations, is to stop educating prospects. The other item would be ask tougher questions. I think salespeople don't understand their rights. You have a prospect who wants to ask all the questions, get all the information. Salespeople feel that they must be good soldiers, that they gotta, ask the questions or answer the questions when asked. And that's just not the case. I think, salespeople oftentimes put themselves in a box because of their eagerness to want to answer the prospect's questions instead of seeking greater clarity by asking questions. And let me help you understand that a little bit more. I'm oftentimes asked this, Ken, have you ever worked with anyone in our industry? And I have no idea why they're asking me that question. Are they asking me that question because they're trying to size up my knowledge to see how much expertise I have about their business? I don't know, maybe. But are they asking me that question because they want to find out if I've worked with some of their competitors? And if I have, can they maybe get some inside information from me about their competitors? Maybe. Are they asking me that question because they're one of these hypersensitive business owners, about their, everything's proprietary, and they're concerned that if they were to end up working with me, that, I'm not going to regard, their information as being as confidential as I should. Or maybe they're asking me that question because they're familiar with Sandler. They're asking me that question because they want to find out if they're going to be maybe the first ones to work with me amongst their competitors. And if so, maybe they can get a leg up on their competitors because they can implement our strategies before the competition does. I mean, I just don't know. And so when I'm asked that question, I've got to come back and turn that into a question. Help me a little bit. Sounds important. I find that people ask that question for different reasons. Why do you ask? And I may even have to help them still. But I think, again, salespeople don't ask the tough questions. They don't recognize they earn that right. Prospects want proposals. They want their time. They want salespeople to travel out to see them, whatever, by car, by plane, by train. They want salespeople to spend all their resources and time putting together proposals and doing demonstrations. As a group of sales and business development, client development professionals, we have the right to ask any question. And we deserve those answers. So if a prospect is unwilling to share, yeah, these are the alternatives, these are the competitors I'm talking to. If one is unwilling to share that, I don't think you have a prospect. So, asking tougher questions. And then finally, this is a conceptual thing that goes along with the other three, is don't be afraid to tick prospects off. So everyone's running, and don't take, when I say that, don't take that, as too literally. But I think what happens is, as human beings, we're emotional. It's a cultural thing. We've all grown up and taught the importance of getting along well with everyone and not rocking the boat, and how important it is to have friends, and how it is for people to like you. And these are all messages that we got as little kids. And everyone takes this with them into their adult lives. And this need for approval is interesting, because if you look at those that have the strongest need for approval, many of those tend to be drawn to the profession of selling. And I have the opportunity to work with some top performers, and I hear some of them say, "Oh no, need for approval. No, man, I'm bulletproof." And those end up being some of the people that are blown away by the prospect. When they think they've got a great prospect, and the prospect shares with them that they've given the business to the competition. I mean, they have a meltdown. I mean, they're blown away. It has a huge impact on their ability to immediately turn around and go make something else happen. So prospects never invite us over because they want to make friends. Now, as a selling professional, you go and see a prospect, and prospects typically are warm and friendly and maybe offer you donuts and do whatever. Well, that's because they want to know what the salesperson knows. They want that information. I sometimes remind those that I'm working with when this subject arises, hey, let's look back on Memorial Day. On Labor Day, it just happened. How many of you were invited to your prospect's Labor Day picnic? And for that matter, how many of you were invited to your client's Labor Day picnic? So professional selling is not a place to make friends. It's a place to help people. And again, not to make friends. I'm not saying you draw a line in the sand, but no one needs prospects as friends. Now, it's important that prospects trust us. It's important that prospects respect us. But again, we all have people who love us. We all have others who like us. And that emotional need is not one to get met when one is out there trying to make business happen. So again, our challenge is, how do we help people, make this segregation, and how do we help them understand that this need for validation and approval, it's there with everyone. With different levels, but how do we get them, if you will, how do we train and coach that out of them so that they can then begin to alter their behavior in a significant way, which will then in turn alter their results?
You've given us a lot of great content, a lot of great practical advice here. Listeners, if you're going to build a business that's going to be sellable, one of the value drivers, Walter mentioned it earlier on, that is absolutely critical is financial performance, and financial performance being revenues and profitability. And so you've got a lot of, actually Ken has provided a lot of education here today on this podcast as to how you can increase sales and henceforth revenue. Ken, is there any additional information that the listeners could access, or how could one learn more about the Sandler Sales Processes and Institute if they feel so inclined?
Okay, and when we spoke earlier about the prospect system, And I know most selling professionals have never given this thought. They unknowingly default to that. And, the prospects oftentimes, control the process. And there is a great white paper that is available with some really, up-to-date current insights. And that white paper is available at this URL, Why Salespeople Fail, all one word, Why Salespeople Fail .online. So again, that is Why Salespeople Fail .online. And again, that provides a further elaboration on what I was talking about as far as the prospect system and what selling professionals must do to alter their approaches so that it will allow them to overcome, some of these power moves and the way that the prospects take control of the process. The other thing that I would mention is that we are doing a workshop here for business owners and entrepreneurs and managers, those who, of course, are involved in sales and client development, maybe from a management position and working and leading those who do, or they're looking to implement a more predictable process in their business. And that's on October the 23rd. It's at our training and resource center that's on Gaither Road. That's a Wednesday. It's in the morning from 8 to 10:30. And one can find out information about that session. They can also register online at this URL. It is salesprocess2019.com. Again, it's SalesProcess 2019.com. Salesprocess2019.com.
Very good. And then, Ken, if they wanted to contact you directly, can they do that? And if so, can you provide that contact information?
Two different ways. By phone, that would be 301-590-8700, extension 101. Again, that's 301-590-8700, extension 101, or by email, and that is ken.smith, ken.smith, S-M-I-T-H, at Sandler.com, Sandler.com, ken.smith at Sandler.com.
Excellent. Okay, Ken, thank you so much. Massively helpful today. Listeners, again, if you're struggling with, if your revenues have plateaued and you don't seem to be closing as many sales as you want to, need to, and you have uncertainty or lack confidence in your sales processes, reach out to Ken. Consider reaching out to him and his group, and they can certainly absolutely help you. Also, if you can begin now planning your exit, if you've listened to this podcast before or anything Walter and I have ever done, you're aware that a key message of ours is you can't get started soon enough. So you can begin now planning your exit with an online course and seminars, Exit Readiness Academy at exitreadiness.com. You can do it at your own pace. And you can also access resources at grfcpa.com and nslp.com. And if you'd like to speak with either Walter or myself regarding building the value of your business or planning your exit, you can reach Walter at 301-951-9090. You can reach me at 301-859-0860. Again, Ken, thanks so much. We really appreciate having you today. And until next time, listeners on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Pat Ennis and Walter Dial signing off.